weekly research insights with Elite Mind. So those are our live conversations where we discuss a variety of topics from organizational well-being industry and often discussing topics that stay behind the closed doors. Today, I wanted to talk about the myths of time management. And time management is one of those skills that is always on all of the leadership training workshops. It's one of those things that people say, oh, I'm really not good at. I wish I could get better at. And time is this finite resource that we have only a limited amount of time in our day, in our lives. And how do we apply ourselves in a way that we can really make the most out of this? It's really a big question to ask and a big skill to learn in a way. So what we want to look at today is why is it that we are really struggling with time management, and what is it that we can do to really boost our productivity and performance? We look at different aspects of how we can kind of expand time by managing energy instead. And we also look at some of practical things that we can do to plan our week and our day in a way that really makes the difference and moves the needle towards our goals. So where do we start? Well, please do say hello if you're watching, and I'd love to see some of your questions, comments, suggestions. I would also like to ask you a question. How good do you think you are with your time? And what are some of these best practices that you do that works for you to manage your own time, your own diary? What are specific tools that you are using to plan and to organize your diaries and your to-do lists? And what is helping you and what doesn't? I'd really love to hear some of the feedback, thoughts, and comments on how you are engaging with time management in your own life. So, where do we start? Well, I want to start with the language that we use when we talk about time. And very often, if you think about even the way we talk about our day to other people, if somebody asks, how are you? It's so often that you say, I'm great, I'm so busy, as if busy is somehow this great thing that we should be proud of, right? And this is really a reflection of how we live our lives today, where it somehow even feels wrong not to do anything. And people feel guilty when they have nothing to do, or we're constantly comparing ourselves with somebody else who is somehow doing more, somehow packing more in their time, right? And we always admiring somebody who, manages to achieve so much. And I think it kind of really highlights this importance of reflecting on how we live our lives and how we really work in our society. And since when being busy just for the sake of it is a good thing. So if you are saying that you are being busy, then what is it that you're really being busy with? And sometimes being busy can be just an excuse of not living your life really and not doing things that really matters. So watch that language and really look at whether being busy is really your definition of your quality of your life and your time and how you want to live. The other aspect of how we talk about time is when we are invited to do things, or when we are asked to do certain activities, we constantly hear the sayings of, I don't have time. I don't have time to do XYZ. So again, if we think about that as a frame of mindset in terms of how we're approaching our priorities in our life, then we realize that this sentence is often not even a representation of how much time we have or what we don't have, because at the end of the day, we all have exactly the same 24 hours in a day, right? But how we choose to allocate and how we choose to prioritize our activities within those 24 hours is entirely up to us, right? Nobody has shrunk our day into less, and there's no way to expand those hours into more either. So, to have or not to have time, it's kind of irrelevant question, because we all have 24 hours in a day. It's how we use this. And sometimes when we say we don't have time, it's a reflection of sense of priorities that we are, how we're applying, how we're spending our time, really, not in terms of what we really have or what we don't. So next time when you say I don't have time, I'd love to invite you to really reflect on, what does this mean for my priorities? And if I say that I don't have time for this, what is it that I do have time for? And if this is something that I want to do, how can I create some of that time? How can I prioritize some of those activities? And for me, I think, when I look at my life, there are a lot of things that, I keep postponing because I think, like, oh, I don't have time. For example, I have a lot of clothes in my wardrobe, and I think, like, I really need to clear a lot of old stuff and give it away to charity. But it's probably been few years until I've really managed to do this, because that's just such a low priority. But if somebody came to me and they say, oh, you know what, I'm going to give you, £10,000 to sort your wardrobe, I will find time for that this evening, right? Regardless of how little time I have. And it's just representation of shifting priorities and where we focus on. Also, when something happens in our lives that it's urgent, there is some sort of crisis happens, I don't know, water start leaking from our ceiling, or some other emergency situations that happen in our life, we have no choice, but we have to address them. And therefore, we do find time to address that around everything else that we are doing, right? So things that are really important, we should really be prioritizing with this urgency. Now, how do we do that? How can we really look at time and apply our sense of urgency and priorities to it? And as we know, we all have the same amount of time in a day. But actually, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever felt in a state of flow where you really engaged with something that you really enjoy a lot, and in that moment it seems like time expands or even slows down or even stops, like the concept of time somehow disappears when we are really, really engaged with something that we love doing? Have you ever experienced that? Well, if you use that example, then you can see that time is a concept that is really, really fluid, and we can kind of expand that, and it can expand and contract based on the state of the energy that we are in internally. And if we are really motivated to do something, if we are really engaged, if we are really aligned with our purpose and vision and mission, what is it that we want to create in life? We by nature will prioritize those activities, and we will achieve it no matter what, right? So if we want to have more done in our life, if we really want to prioritize our productivity and goals, then the answer to that is really tap into the energy side of things, to motivation and purpose behind why we do what we do, so that the priorities and the investment in our time and how we spend it shifts to our advantage. Now, the question, of course, is how do we do that? So I don't know if you've heard of a model by Tony Shorts. I think initially it was published probably in something like 2007 in Harvard Business Review. That is called Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. And in that article, they introduce these 4 levels of energy management that can really boost your activity and productivity. And we also use this model in some of our productivity workshops, and we just add some layers of neuroscience to it to really unpack what does it mean to how can we really kind of expand the human productivity and performance from that perspective. So what are those 4 levels? So there are 4 levels of energy. So there is in original article, there is a physical level. So there's your body, there is emotional one, there is a mind one, and the spirit level. Now, I like to look at this as kind of different kind of levels of energy in terms of quantity, quality, direction of that energy, and purpose of that energy. So let's start from the first one. And the first is the basics of physical level of energy, and that is the amount of energy that you have. So this is relates to the basic amount of the energy that we have to spend, and we refine that energy through our diet, through our quality of our sleep, through our rest, by working in sync with our body and working within, let's say, 24-hour clock of our body to really be much more effective and productive. And it is quite easy actually to measure the physical level of energy, because first of all, you can feel it, right? You can feel energized or you can feel tired and drained. So it is very easy to feel that. But also now we have all sort of digital monitoring devices, smart watches, heart rate variability monitors that can actually put the number and quantify that energy and quantify the quality of our sleep and our rest and how much energy do we really have. So it's very important that we prioritize this aspect of self-care and rest and rejuvenation, and have those clear boundaries to really invest in our own recovery. Because if we want to go out there and conquer the world, we cannot pour from an empty glass. So it's so important to have processes, boundaries, routines, and healthy habits to refuel and to rejuvenate ourselves. And this also applies to our ways of working. So when organizations are designing their working environments, where they're designing their ways of working, it is very important that we also consider our circadian rhythms and ultradian cycles as well. So when we talk about circadian rhythm, this is our 24-hour clock, and the ultradian rhythms are these, let's say 90-minute cycles in our brain waves of the activity, where we have the peak in energy and concentration, and then it dips and we need to take time to refocus and rest. And nowadays the way we work is really not helpful, because we're pushing ourselves to kind of plow for 8-9 hours straight, right? And if we can't concentrate, we think there is something wrong with us, right? We drink 10 cups of coffee and we try to push through. But actually, that's not the right way of engaging with our day, because there are limits how much our brain can how much information it can take in. There are limits in our kind of oxygenated glucose in our brain. If you think that from the fuel of the brain, what that feeds that energy, there are limited resources for that. So we really need to make sure that we recuperate and rejuvenate that, so we can keep coming back to our best performance level. So physical level, that is all about that amount of energy that we have, and it's really all about your diet, your sleep, your exercise, your quality of your rest during the day, and your ability to manage your focus and rest times during the day. The second level is the emotional level, and this is about the quality of energy, right? So you might have a lot of energy, but if that energy is anger, if it's stress, if it's frustration, how helpful is it? So with that energy, you can still burn out, and it's still not driving your best behavior. It's not driving your best productive self. So here we are looking at how can we learn these processes of self-regulation? How can we find a way to manage our stress levels? How can we find a way to manage some of those impulses, cravings, and really turn some of those negative emotions into more positive drivers? So when we look at this level, here it's much more therapeutic process, where we can really engage in understanding our triggers, our past responses, and why we do what we do, and really work on aspects of self-regulation, strengthening our vagus nerve. And some of those processes are quite simple when we are looking at mindfulness, when we're looking at variety of breathing techniques, when we're looking at being able to remain present intentionally in the current moment and maintain our focus of attention and awareness. Those things can have a huge impact on shifting that quality of energy from that draining negativity to positive and calm energy, from which we are able to then choose wisely how we want to spend our time and how exactly what actions do we take, so it gives us the results over a long period of time. Now, the third level is more of a cognitive mind. So this is like a mind level, and this is about direction of that energy. So where exactly do we focus your attention? Where do we focus your energy? Where do you apply yourself so you get the most out of your time? And this is really all about priorities. And of course, we have all of these tools of, and metaphors of, a jar of rocks and water, and what do you put in first, making sure that you prioritize your biggest tasks. Um, we have all sorts of different frameworks to allow us to kind of prioritize what's urgent, what's more important, like Eisenhower matrix and so on. So there's a lot of tools here as well from the tech perspective, where you look at AI tools, productivity tools, automated diaries, and so on, that can really help us to to structure our day in the right way. And what I really like, if you haven't watched, I'd really recommend for you to watch a talk by Laura Vanderkam. It's called How to Gain Control of Your Free Time. And it is, so Laura spent a lot of time researching how people manage their time. And she had a lot of monitoring of people's diaries and hour by hour their activities, in order to understand how people can achieve so much more with their time and with their day. And the biggest insights from her work are really that, it's not about managing the time, but again, actively making those choices of how we spend time and prioritizing things that really matters. Now, here is the example, and there is a book by Laura Vanderkam called 168 Hours. So 168 represents the amount of hours that we have in a week. So 24 times 7, that's 168. Now, if we say that we sleep 8 hours a night, then that makes up 56 hours of our week. So we take away the sleep time. Then let's say that we work for 40 hours a week. That gives us, that takes away those hours, and it still gives us 72 hours of life outside of sleep and outside of work. Even if you work 9 hours a day, or you add some extra commuting time, that still gives us in total nearly 70 hours a week. And if you think, that's 10 hours a day to do whatever you want to do. Now, when we think about this in this way, it doesn't look like we don't have time anymore, right? We realize that this is about how we choose to spend it and how we choose to prioritize it. And yes, we spend a lot of time wasting this precious, valuable resource, instead of really investing in it to build our better future. So if you have 70 hours in your week, how exactly you're going to spend it next week? And the best thing that I have done personally, that I've taken all of the things that I would like to prioritize and that I would like to do, including all of these aspects of self-care and time for mindfulness and meditation and time for planning and structuring my day. And I actually put that in my calendar before anything else goes in. So I have time for my lunch, I have time for my sleep, I have time for my dog walks, I have time for exercise. And that is a blocked out time, which means that nobody else can schedule meetings over it, or anything else that I plan to choose to do is already around it. And that made a huge, huge difference in my time. The other thing that really helped me is looking at, again, at this kind of mindset aspect. Really trying to eradicate this "I don't have time" out of my vocabulary. Because if I say that I don't have time, it's only representation of my priorities and what is it that I have chosen to actively do in that week. So if you think of that from mindset perspective, from the limiting beliefs perspective, shifting that attitude can be a really, really powerful tool in just allowing us to spend our time much more wisely. Now, what I want to leave you with is the aspect of limiting beliefs when they are attached to our own identity. So, the moment when you say, I am not good at something, I am always doing XYZ, that always implies some sort of a belief that you hold about yourself at the core of your identity level. So I'd really encourage you to question those things. And when you say that I can't do this because I am like this, I am not good at XYZ, look at what is it here? What are those beliefs that you hold about yourself that imply that you are not able to do this? Or what are the beliefs at the value level that you hold that means that you are simply not prioritizing this thing in your life? Or maybe it's not aligned with your intentions. So I worked, for example, with a coach who asked me to mentor her to help improve her income and to streamline some of her ways of working. And at some point, working through, she said the sentence of, "Well, it is bad to be a millionaire. It's really, it's not good to be a millionaire." And she really believed that having a lot of money means that you are taking resource away from other people and you are just, keeping it all for yourself. And therefore that's bad. And for someone who's very kind and caring and invested in supporting others, that was in conflict with the way she wanted to work. So whenever you use the language to define what you can do and what you cannot, look at those beliefs and values at the identity level and the beliefs you hold around it, and question that and see how we sometimes sabotage ourselves in that aspect, which kind of leaves us with this kind of fourth level of this energy management from Tony Short's model, which is that spiritual purpose level. Why am I doing what am I doing? Where is it gonna get me? And do I live life in a way that when I get to the end, I can look back and with pride say that I lived life with no regret? So that's exactly what I would wish for you to have and to do. And if you would like any help prioritizing some of your personal time, I would be very happy to have a chat with you. Feel free to book a call in my calendar. Let's have a coffee. And we also run corporate workshops on productivity and really going through these different layers of self-care and focus and productivity and self-regulation in a way that's aligned to your bigger vision, mission, and purpose, so it can really drive that productivity. The best way to drive productivity at the company level is to align companies' goals, vision, direction to personal motivations and individual purpose of each individual employee that's working in that company. And that's the best way to drive performance and productivity from time management point of view. So let's stop managing time. Let's manage the energy and let's align our ways of working with our values, beliefs, and purposeful goals and direction that you are going in life. So thank you very much. Thank you for those who are watching. Thank you for engagement. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a great weekend. Bye then.